Chapter 3707, Chapter 781, First Preliminary Battle. Chapter 3707, Chapter 781, First Preliminary Battle. Chapter 781, First Preliminary Battle. As the loud voice echoed across the plaza, everyone felt the power of space and time restraining their bodies. Even those with basic attributes as strong as Tier 6 gods found themselves immobilized completely. Immediately afterward, 120 miniature worlds materialized above the plaza, each encompassing a 1,000-meter radius. Then, as soon as these miniature worlds appeared, the 2,520 players in the plaza were randomly assigned into groups of 21 and drawn into these miniature worlds. Heavens blessed, you have been separated from your parties and assigned to one of 120 groups. In each group, you are required to fight your fellow contenders in a round-robin tournament, and each victory you achieve will influence the points you receive at the end of the preliminaries. If you wish for your party to pass the preliminaries, your party's total points must be within the top 32. Parties who fail to rank among the top 32 will be disqualified, but those who rank among the top 64 may stay behind to spectate. Everyone else will be teleported back to where they came from. Now, without further ado, I announce the start of the Continental Championships preliminaries. May each group's selected contenders step onto the ring. When the players who were drawn into the miniature worlds heard the deafening voice's announcement, they started to scrutinize the players around them, fighting spirit burning in their eyes. They obviously understood that all the players drawn into the same miniature world were their opponents. Are these newcomers my opponents this time? What the hell? This isn't fair. Why did I get assigned to the same group as Garuda? You're saying that's unfair? How about you take a look at my group? My group has 10 members of parties who made it past the preliminaries last time. When the players in the 120 miniature worlds were done inspecting their opponents, some grew excited, while some had the urge to cry. When it came to parties capable of passing the Continental Championships preliminaries, not a single one had any incompetent party members. After all, parties were ranked based on their total points in the preliminaries. If a party member did poorly in the preliminaries, it would severely impact the party's overall performance. Because of this, the members of such qualifying parties could typically rank among the top 10 of their respective groups in the preliminaries, even if they were put against strong opponents. If they got put against weak opponents, they could even try to get into the top 6 or 7. After the major system update, players would expend a considerable amount of stamina and concentration in every battle. Although players could not truly die in the Continental Championship, they would still consume stamina and concentration in every match they fought, and none of it would be replenished. If they encountered a tough fight in their first few matches, it would adversely impact their performance in subsequent matches. Of course, participants could also forfeit a match outright to conserve their stamina and concentration. But for those capable of participating in the Continental Championship, who would be willing to give up without a fight? How interesting. I didn't think we would be assigned to the same group. When Venom Tail saw Shifeng similarly assigned to Miniature World 085, he felt pleasantly surprised and nervous at the same time. Previously, Venom Tail had taken a huge hit to his reputation in Sovereign Mark because of Shifeng. The encounter in Shadowring Town had even allowed Chalk Splendor to make fun of him. Yet, all he could do at the time was grind his teeth in anger and frustration. Now, though, not only did he come across Shifeng again in the Continental Championship, but they were also assigned to the same group in the preliminaries. This was undoubtedly a good opportunity for him to get revenge. As for why Venom Tail felt nervous, it was because he would be fighting Shifeng in his 10th match. In a situation where they were both individuals ranked on the Transcendent list, he couldn't confidently say he could defeat Shifeng. After the various parties learned of their party members' grouping, Verdant Rainbow's expression turned a little ugly. Damn it. How are we so unlucky? Verdant Rainbow had the urge to curse out loud when she saw the groups her party members were assigned. The groups she, Shifeng, and Deathwind were assigned were still relatively normal. The strongest member of their groups was only a member of a top 16 party. Their groups also only had up to 2 members of parties that had made it past the preliminaries in the last Continental Championship. Moreover, none of them were key members of their parties. As for the rest of their group members, They were relatively unknown experts among the three races. However, it was a different story for Gentle Snow, Fervent Samsara, and Heavy Abyss. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to consider their groups as hell. Each of them had to face anywhere from 7 to 10 members of parties that had made it past the preliminaries. The situation was especially bad in Miniature World 006, the world Gentle Snow was assigned. In addition to having to face 10 contenders who had successfully made it past the preliminaries in the past, she also had to face a key member of the previous championship's top 8 party. Returning Blade the Soulbreaker. In terms of individual strength, Returning Blade could rank among the top 20 in the last Continental Championship. His ability to transform into a soul-breaking beast made it life-threatening for his opponents to face him head-on. Anyone struck by the soul-breaking beast would not only lose HP but also have a portion of their souls devoured. Moreover, the soul-breaking beast would usually remain in an ethereal form and only materialize when launching an attack, making it immune to attacks most of the time. To make matters worse, Gentle Snow's first battle in her group was against Returning Blade. Should Gentle Snow refuse to forfeit her match and insist on fighting Returning Blade, she might as well not fight in the remaining 19 matches. Guild leader Black Flame, how about advising Gentle Snow to forfeit her match against Returning Blade? Returning Blade is no ordinary expert. After the major system update, the threat of his soul-breaking beast has most likely risen to a whole new level. Even trading blows with him would severely impact her performance in subsequent matches, Verdant Rainbow hurriedly said after contacting Shifeng. Gentle Snow was Zero Wing's vice guild leader, so Verdant Rainbow didn't think it would be appropriate for an outsider like herself to persuade the other party. After all, the Continental Championship was a precious opportunity for expert players to clash with apex experts of foreign races in a one-on-one scenario. Thus, only Shifeng, the guild leader of Zero Wing, had the qualifications to dissuade Gentle Snow from proceeding with her fight with Returning Blade. Miss Rainbow, I think we should leave this decision to Snow's judgment. While Returning Blade might be a powerful foe, Zero Wing's vice guild leaders are no pushovers, either, Shifeng said. Despite seeing the worry on Verdant Rainbow's face, he had no intention of intervening in Gentle Snow's decisions. Ever since Gentle Snow had been chosen by Fate's guidance, 1. Her strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Now that she had equipped the new God Chaser set, even Shifeng had no idea how strong she had become. Although there was still a possibility Gentle Snow might not be a match for Returning Blade, he doubted she would be outright defeated. Meanwhile, Verdant Rainbow was at a loss of words after hearing Shifeng's refusal. At this rate, their party might not even be able to make it past the preliminaries, let alone enter the championship's top 4. At the same time, Deathwind couldn't help but smile when he was done inspecting the groups to which he and his party members were assigned. Setting Gentle Snow aside, it would be a miracle if Fervent Samsara and Heavy Abyss could place 5th in their respective groups. Now, all he had to do was place 10th in his group to win his bet with Shifeng. Miniature World 006's second match is over. Winner, Black Jade of the Holy Race. Miniature World 006's third match will now begin. May the Holy Race's Returning Blade and the Human Race's Gentle Snow take the ring. TL Notes. 1. Fate's Guidance. To recap, Fate's Guidance is referring to the Goddess Armament set that appeared in Chapter 554. I don't know what Gentle Snow had been chosen by Fate's Guidance means exactly, but I doubt Gentle Snow has already conquered all 12 trials as she still needs to equip the God Chaser set. A more likely scenario is that she has cleared 1 or 2 trials and obtained some of the goddess's legacy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3708, Chapter 782, Goddess's Sword Technique, Advanced Gold Combat Technique. Chapter 3708, Chapter 782, Goddess's Sword Technique, Advanced Gold Combat Technique. Chapter 782, Goddess's Sword Technique, Advanced Gold Combat Technique, Crucible of the Ancients, Miniature World 006. I finally get to see Returning Blade fight again. That human girl sure is unlucky to meet Returning Blade on her first match. I wonder how far she can push Returning Blade. It would be great if she could get him to reveal some of his cards. Who do you take returning blade for? He's already considered one of the top 20 experts in the last Continental Championship. Now that he has replaced his staff and all of his equipment, it's obvious he has become much stronger. At this point, I'd be grateful if that human girl could even burn some of returning blade's stamina, let alone force him to reveal his cards. I guess you're right. Let's hope the human girl can last a little longer. When the participants in Miniature World 006 saw returning blade and gentle snow step onto the ring, they started a hushed discussion among themselves. Of the 21 participants assigned to Miniature World 006, most deemed returning blade to be the strongest among them. So, whether they could rank first in the group depended on whether they could defeat returning blade. If it was before the major system update, none of them would have even considered defeating returning blade. However, following the major system update, the limitation that stamina and concentration placed on players had increased substantially, making it very challenging for players to fight at their peak for prolonged periods. Thus, so long as returning blade failed to conserve his stamina and concentration adequately in his first few matches, it was entirely possible for the participants of Miniature World 006 to defeat him. On the ring, returning blade and gentle snow stood facing each other. Returning blade was a member of the holy race whose body was covered with holy patterns. He wore a silver-grey leather jacket, and his gaze was as sharp as a snake. Although he looked no older than 30, the way he carried himself indicated that he had already reached the unthinking realm. If placed among human players, he would be considered a monster among monsters. Admit defeat. You are no match for me. When returning blade saw that the human female clad in silver armor and carrying a greatsword was only at level 187, he unceremoniously said, "You will only be wasting your stamina and concentration by fighting me. You'd be better off conserving them for your subsequent matches. You might even be able to secure a better placement. Admit defeat to conserve my stamina and concentration." Gentle Snow smiled at returning blade's suggestion. Then, while grabbing the Chaos Windblade from her back, she said, "But I don't think I will have to expend much stamina and concentration fighting you." As soon as Gentle Snow finished speaking, the spectators below the ring rolled their eyes in unison. They all thought that Gentle Snow was crazy beyond salvation. It should be known that returning blade was a key member of a top 8 party in the last Continental Championship. Even when compared to the other players among the top 8, few would dare say they were superior in individual strength. One could say that he was second to only experts of the Holy Race's Garuda and the Crystallion's Rin's caliber. Not to mention, after the major system update, the threat of returning blade's soul-breaking beast had risen to a whole new level. Now, even the experts who ranked among the top 10 of the previous Continental Championship would find it a headache to fight him. In contrast, Gentle Snow was a human berserker whose name nobody present had heard before. This proved that the various powers didn't consider her a noteworthy threat. Yet, despite being such an insignificant character, she dared to treat returning blade with little regard. Aside from having a few screws loose in her head, what else could lead her to do such a thing? Good. Very good. Returning blade narrowed his eyes as he looked at Gentle Snow with an icy gaze. The last time I met a human player as audacious as you were when I lost to that girl Elise. Let's see how your audacity stacks up to hers. You're in luck, then. You'll get to experience the same situation again, Gentle Snow calmly said. Returning blade grew enraged at Gentle Snow's remark. Immediately, he exerted his holy aura and merged it with his staff, sparking a reaction that transformed him into a 5-headed beast that was over 20 meters tall. The 5-headed beast looked like the agglomeration of countless evil spirits, its body constantly phasing in and out of existence, making it impossible for players to see its appearance clearly. Meanwhile, when the participants below the ring saw returning blade's soul-breaking beast, they all revealed gloomy looks. He's using his trademark move right off the bat. This soul-breaking beast looks even stronger than the last one he transformed into. The last one only had 3 heads, while this one has 2 more. Moreover, this one's aura is clearly stronger than level 200, tier 6 gods. When the spectating participants saw the level 192 soul-breaking beast, their souls experienced a suffocating feeling. Those who had seen Returning Blade's performance in the last Continental Championship were especially shocked to see how much Returning Blade had improved since then. Fusion Holy Art, Holy Beast Incarnation. It was a fusion holy art that allowed players to transform into a soul-breaking beast. Meanwhile, the strength of the soul-breaking beast created could be determined based on the number of heads it had. This was because each additional head a soul-breaking beast possessed meant that it would gain an additional attack method. Normally, when players used a doppelganger skill, they had to control their doppelgangers indirectly through the game system. The process was akin to manipulating a stringed puppet. However, that was not true for the soul-breaking beast's multiple heads. Each additional head a soul-breaking beast had meant that the user could have their consciousness split one more time. This allowed them to manipulate each head directly as if they were manipulating their own body, which, in turn, enabled them to exhibit 100% of their combat standards with every head. Die. As soon as his transformation was complete, Returning Blade had the soul-breaking beast's 5 heads strike out at gentle snow simultaneously. Each head could extend infinitely and materialize at will. Not only did this make it difficult to predict their attack trajectories, it was also challenging to predict when they would materialize. Furthermore, all 5 heads could carry out their attacks without any need for thought, making it nigh impossible to evade them. Meanwhile, as Returning Blade expected, Gentle Snow could not evade all of his attacks. Hence, she opted not to evade them. Instead, she raised the Chaos Windblade and executed a downward swing. Then, all of a sudden, the ground within a 50-yard radius of Gentle Snow sank. 2 of the soul-breaking beast's heads that were in the middle of launching an attack on Gentle Snow also fell to the ground like metal attracted to a powerful magnet. My attacks couldn't connect. Returning Blade couldn't help but doubt his 5 senses at this moment. The soul-breaking beast's body was his body, so he could feel everything it felt. Originally, 2 of the soul-breaking beast's heads had materialized and were about to clamp down their jaws on Gentle Snow. Yet, an invisible force had abruptly cut their advance short and redirected their attack trajectory when they were only a finger's width away from reaching her. Aside from Returning Blade, the spectating participants below the ring were similarly confused as to what had just happened. So, this is the goddess's sword technique? While watching the live broadcast of Gentle Snow's match, Shifeng vaguely figured out how Gentle Snow achieved what she had just done. At a glance, it was obvious Gentle Snow had somehow created a downward wind pressure on the area around herself. Although Returning Blade's soul-breaking beast maintained an ethereal form, so long as it materialized, it would immediately be subjected to this downward pressure. It was also evident that the soul-breaking beast's heads were not immune to the pressure as they had their attack trajectories forcibly redirected. However, what Shifeng couldn't figure out was what Gentle Snow had done to create this continuous wind pressure. It was an attack method he had never seen Gentle Snow use before, and he could only assume it was a combat technique she had learned through Fate's guidance. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3709, Chapter 783, Monster of a New Generation. Chapter 3709, Chapter 783, Monster of a New Generation. Chapter 783, Monster of a New Generation. Am I hallucinating? Why didn't Returning Blade's attack connect? This human girl is amazing. She actually stopped an attack from Returning Blade. Are we going to see the birth of a new monster in the Continental Championship? When the spectators of Miniature World 006 saw Gentle Snow stopping Returning Blade's attacks, although they didn't understand how exactly she accomplished it, they knew how incredible of an accomplishment it was. This made them change their opinions of Gentle Snow. Before the match between Gentle Snow and Returning Blade began, everyone thought the match was overwhelmingly in Returning Blade's favor. But now, they felt that the match could go either way, and they immediately started to pay closer attention to the match. Normally, a matchup between experts of Returning Blade's caliber would only occur in the Continental Championship's main event. For this reason, only parties who could rank among the top 64 would get to spectate such matchups. It seems I have underestimated you. However, this is only the beginning. Ultimately, Returning Blade was an expert among experts. Although he couldn't quite understand how gentle snow had redirected the soul-breaking beast's attacks, he quickly realigned his emotions and made his next move. Holy art, supersize. Suddenly, the soul-breaking beast's body expanded, transforming into a behemoth over 300 meters tall and occupying a considerable section of the ring. Gentle snow also looked no different than an ant in front of the soul-breaking beast's mountainous figure. Let's see how you deflect my attack this time. As soon as returning blade finished speaking, one of the soul-breaking beast's gigantic heads opened its maw to clamp down on gentle snow. Not only did the current attack have a significantly greater AoE, but the power it exerted could also rival an all-out attack from a level 200, tier 6 god. Additionally, because of Supersize's effects, even if gentle snow could similarly deflect this stronger attack, the soul-breaking beast could alternatively choose to materialize itself only after it had devoured gentle snow already. Although doing so would not deprive gentle snow of any HP, it would subject her to the soul-corroding properties of the soul-breaking beast's attacks. Returning Blade had learned Supersize thanks to the guidance he received in the last championship. Originally, he had intended to reserve it as a trump card for when he went up against the members of the previous championship's top 8 parties during the main event. However, now that Gentle Snow had shown herself capable of stopping his trademark move, he naturally couldn't afford to conserve his strength anymore. The preliminaries this time were much more competitive than the last championship, so if possible, he would prefer to defeat his opponents as quickly as possible. That way, he could conserve his stamina and concentration to the greatest extent to deal with future variables. Trying to use size to your advantage. Let's see who comes out on top, then. When Gentle Snow saw the soul-breaking beast's gigantic, ethereal head descending upon her, she abruptly inserted the Chaos Windblade into the ground and gathered her mana into the weapon. Simultaneously, whether it was mana or holy power, all forms of energy in the ring began gathering around the Chaos Windblade, causing the weapon to give off a colorful radiance that brightly illuminated the entire miniature world. Is this a human skill? That's not right. Aren't the human race's skills and spells supposed to use mana only? How is she absorbing the holy race's holy power as well? The spectators of Miniature World 006 were in disbelief when they saw what was happening before their eyes. In fact, even Shifeng, who was watching the match's live broadcast, was a little dumbfounded. The energy used by every race of players in God's domain was preordained. Human players could only use mana, while holy race players could use only holy power. It was impossible for the two races to use each other's energy. Although never explicitly stated, everyone regarded this as an ironclad law in God's domain. Yet, Gentle Snow had broken this supposed law. Subsequently, when the soul-breaking beast's attacking head came within 10 yards of her, Gentle Snow suddenly removed the Chaos Windblade from the ground in a dramatic manner, causing everyone in the miniature world to feel a gentle breeze brushing past their face. Did her execution fail? The spectators below the ring couldn't help but be confused by this situation. They couldn't see Gentle Snow's actions yielding any effects. They also couldn't see anything happening to the soul-breaking beast's attacking head. So, their immediate reaction was to assume Gentle Snow had failed to execute whatever move she was trying to use. However, the spectators quickly noticed something was wrong. More specifically, they noticed that the soul-breaking beast had stopped moving entirely. Immediately afterward, the spectators below the ring found their vision darkening. Then, before they realized it, they were in the air and free-falling. What's going on? The spectators in Miniature World 006 were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand what was happening. However, Shifeng and Verdant Rainbow, who were watching the match through the live broadcast, saw what happened very clearly. After Gentle Snow removed her greatsword from the ground, the space within Miniature World 006 was flipped upside down. It wasn't that the spectators had suddenly appeared in midair, but that these players were falling toward the sky. Even the soul-breaking beast, who remained in an ethereal state, was affected by this change. Gravity manipulation? Shifeng was greatly shocked by this scene. Previously, he had assumed Gentle Snow's sword technique was related to wind pressure. However, looking at it now, that didn't seem to be the case at all. In its ethereal state, the soul-breaking beast was immune to all physical and magical attacks. The only thing that could affect it was gravity. This was why the soul-breaking beast would fall to the ground should it ever leap into the air. So, now that the direction of miniature world 006's gravity was reversed, the soul-breaking beast had no choice but to go along with gravity and fall to the miniature world's new ground. Meanwhile, after Shifeng understood the true nature of the new strength Gentle Snow had grasped, he turned off the live broadcast and focused his attention elsewhere. After all, if Gentle Snow could manipulate gravity, and to such a great extent at that, the soul-breaking beast would gain no advantages from being in an ethereal state. And should Returning Blade try to compete with Gentle Snow in strength, he would quickly find himself outmatched. Essentially, Returning Blade's defeat was assured. Back in miniature world 006, Returning Blade was in a state of confusion. Currently, he couldn't even figure out what Gentle Snow had done, let alone touch her. To make matters worse, his HP was rapidly depleting over time. At this rate, he would lose over half of his HP by the time he landed. Meanwhile, just like Shifeng had anticipated, while Returning Blade was preparing for his landing, Gentle Snow reversed the gravity acting on him once more. Ultimately, Returning Blade didn't even get to land an attack on Gentle Snow before he lost all of his HP. Following Returning Blade's defeat, Gentle Snow's fame skyrocketed. No longer was she considered a nobody. Now, she was regarded as a new generation monster who could defeat a top 20 expert from the last Continental Championship. At the same time, everyone also recognized her as the strongest expert in miniature world 006. Zero Wings Vice Guild Leader, is it? When Elise, the leader of Demon's Gate's party, received news of Gentle Snow's achievement, she couldn't help but watch the battle video her party member had shared with her, a hint of intrigue coloring her eyes. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3710, Chapter 784, The New Replacing the Old. Chapter 3710, Chapter 784, The New Replacing the Old. Chapter 784, The New Replacing the Old. Who is that human newcomer? I can't believe Returning Blade lost to her. Gentle Snow? Could she be a monster secretly nurtured by an apex power? The power of that move has definitely reached the standard of level 200, tier 6 gods already, but why haven't I heard of her before? With such strength, she can probably rank among the top 15 experts in this championship. After the unexpected conclusion of Gentle Snow's first match, the many parties that initially had their attention focused on Returning Blade shifted their emphasis to Gentle Snow. Some of the former top-ranking Holy Race and Crystallian parties also began to investigate Gentle Snow, wanting to know all there was to know about her. Returning Blade was a key member of one of the last championship's top 8 parties. Besides the former first and second-ranked parties, every other party was paying close attention to him. After all, if they wished to enter the top 4, they would inevitably cross paths with Returning Blade. Of course, the reason why even top-ranking parties had decided to pay attention to Gentle Snow wasn't solely because of her victory against Returning Blade. It was also because of how handily she had defeated him. It was obvious she still had some strength hidden, so the various top-ranking parties had to be wary of her. While a party's overall strength played an important role in the Continental Championship's preliminaries, the individual strength of party members would become much more important in the main event. It wasn't strange to see one or two individuals dictating the performance of an entire party. What a powerful sword technique! Verdant Rainbow couldn't help but grow excited when she saw the conclusion of Gentle Snow's first match. No wonder Guild Leader Black Flame was so confident. With such strength, she can probably hold her ground against even the former top 8 monsters. Initially, Verdant Rainbow was still considerably worried about Gentle Snow's performance in her supposedly hellish group. She feared that Gentle Snow might fail to score even 1 point. Should that happen, their party could forget about advancing to the main event. However, after seeing Gentle Snow's strength, Verdant Rainbow was confident the woman could compete for the group champion position, let alone the top 10. Meanwhile, so long as a party had one member who managed to become a group champion in the preliminaries, the party would have a considerable chance of getting past the preliminaries. After all, there were only 120 groups in the preliminaries, and the party members of the former top 16 parties would usually become the group champions of most of these groups. This left only a small limited number of slots for other parties. Hence, if a party could have 2 group champions, so long as the other party members didn't perform too terribly, the party would virtually be guaranteed a spot in the main event. This was also why Verdant Rainbow had originally sought to add 2 level 200+ experts from Zero Wing to her party. Contrasting Verdant Rainbow's reaction, Death Wind revealed an ashen look when he finished watching Gentle Snow's match. He never imagined Gentle Snow would be this strong. She was like a completely different person compared to when she fought in the defensive siege against the Sun Dynasty's Holy Guard. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of the bad news he would receive. While Deathwind was pinning his hopes on Zero Wing's Fervent Samsara and Heavy Abyss, the two concluded their respective matches and shook Deathwind's world once more. Inside Miniature World 023, Fervent Samsara went up against Mono-Eye Florist, a member of a former top 16 party from the Crystallians, and emerged victorious. Inside Miniature World 045, Heavy Abyss went up against Nightmare Soul, a member of a former top 32 party from the Holy Race, and emerged victorious. Although neither Fervent Samsara nor Heavy Abyss had put on an amazing performance like Gentle Snow, their victories left no room for doubt regarding their strength. Additionally, both Mono-Eye Florist and Nightmare Soul were group champions in the last championship's preliminaries, so while not as strong as Returning Blade, they could still be considered powerful experts. Party leader Rin, the party assembled by the 7 Luminaries Alliance's Verdant Rainbow, is quite good. If we include Verdant Rainbow herself, her party now has 4 potential group champions. A young Crystallian man who was over 7 meters tall and carrying a war hammer said as he finished watching the noteworthy battle videos his subordinates had collected for him. Moreover, these 3 newcomers have all defeated former group champions. That Gentle Snow woman, in particular, is practically as strong as my party's Dusky Dove. Quite a few geniuses have popped up on the human side since the last championship. Standing beside the young man, Rin, carrying a staff on the back of her 6-meter-tall body, similarly revealed a look of interest after she was done watching the battle videos her subordinate had prepared for her. It's not just the humans. The Holy Race's Sun Dynasty and Thunder Empire have also added 2 incredible newcomers to their parties, Rin said as she shared 2 battle videos with Dead Soul, the tall young man. Although Rin and Dead Soul did not belong to the same power, with the latter being the leader of an independent party, Dead Soul's party was incredibly strong, having secured 4th place in the previous championship. Dead Soul, the Dragon Hammer, was also one of the few experts who could trade blows with the Holy Race's Divine Fist Garuda. Meanwhile, of the 2 battle videos Rin shared, the first showed the match of Roaring Flame, a new addition to the party led by the Sun Dynasty's Daystar, while the second showed the match of Extreme Feather, a new addition to the party led by the Thunder Empire's Garuda. Roaring Flame was a young man with crimson skin and golden holy patterns in his eyes, looking like a flame elf at first glance. In his video, he could be seen wielding a silver saber, and he used it to defeat a key member of a former top 8 party in one blow. The might of his attack was so powerful that it had destroyed the entire ring and nearly punctured a hole in the miniature world. As for Extreme Feather, she evoked the image of cold for those who laid eyes on her. In her video, she could be seen wielding 2 crescent blades as she moved about the ring at unbelievable speeds. She created over 100 afterimages across the ring with only a step, and it took her only 3 moves to defeat Six-Eyed Mad God, the strongest member of Returning Blade's party and one of the top 10 experts in the previous Continental Championship. It truly is a surprise. I did not think so many of the last championship's top experts would be defeated so soon into the preliminaries. I wonder how many of the former top 20 experts will remain by the end of the preliminaries, Dead Soul said with eyes full of anticipation. I expect only half will remain, Rin calmly commented. The standards of the newcomers this time are quite high. Dead Soul nodded in agreement. He felt that there were indeed quite a few monsters among the newcomers this time. Among them, there were even a few whom he had to be careful against, let alone the other former top 20 experts. While the leaders of the former 2nd and 4th ranked parties were chatting, the contenders in Miniature World 085 started a discussion on the upcoming matchup, Black Flame vs Venom Tail. As expected of Sovereign Mark's newest holy child, Venom Tail has become a lot stronger compared to last time. Not only did he bring a divine artifact with him this time, but the dangerous vibes I am getting from him have also intensified considerably. I wouldn't be surprised if he can match Returning Blade right now. I wouldn't count that Black Flame fella out just yet, though. I think he's a member of the Verdant Rainbow Party, and you know how incredible the party has been performing thus far. It is now considered second only to the Human Star Maiden Party. I wonder how strong Black Flame is. If he is as strong as Venom Tail, the Verdant Rainbow Party will have a good chance of entering the top 16 this time. It might even become the first human party to enter the top 8. The top 8. Aren't you underestimating the former top 8 parties a little? The Verdant Rainbow Party might have defeated Returning Blade, but this season's parties are evidently of a higher standard. Even if Black Flame can match Venom Tail, the best the party can hope for is the top 16. Any higher will just be wishful thinking. Aside from the contenders in Miniature World 085, many players who were paying attention to the Verdant Rainbow Party had also tuned in to watch the match between Black Flame and Venom Tail. They were curious to see how far the Verdant Rainbow Party could make it in the championship. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3711, Chapter 785, Tier 6 Skills that Exceed 100%. Chapter 3711, Chapter 785, Tier 6 Skills that Exceed 100%. Chapter 785, Tier 6 Skills that Exceed 100%. Crucible of the Ancients, Miniature World 104. While a young lady elegantly made her way out of the ring, the 19 spectating contenders outside remained silent, all of them wearing looks of disbelief as they looked at the dead young man from the holy race in the ring. 8 paths died, just like that. This is the little monster of Sovereign Mark's trump card party we are talking about. He's even one of the former top 10 experts. How can he lose so easily? A monster. This human girl is an absolute monster. She clearly only had a minor edge over 8 paths when they fought in the last championship, yet she can now one-shot him? Elise is now probably as strong as Garuda and Rin, right? When the contenders outside the ring looked at Elise, Demon's Gate's strongest chosen one, they felt like they were looking at a monster. It should be known that Sovereign Mark's 8 paths was no weakling. This could be inferred simply through looking at the 2 divine artifacts he had equipped. Additionally, 8 paths was the leader of a top 8 party in the previous Continental Championship. He had even butted heads with Elise's party in the round of 16. Though slightly weaker than Elise at the time, he leveraged the main event's party-based format to achieve victory, halting Elise's party's advance in the top 16. But now, the difference in strength between 8 paths and Elise had expanded from a small gap to a massive chasm. Elise had stepped into a completely different playing field. After Elise made her way out of the ring, her silver eyes suddenly noticed a call request from Phoenix Flame. "Your Highness, Black Flame is going up next," Phoenix Flame said excitedly when she saw her call getting connected. His opponent is Sovereign Mark's Venom Tail. With him as the opponent, we should get a good estimate of Black Flame's true strength. Venom Tail? He should suffice. Elise nonchalantly nodded. If Black Flame hasn't improved since the defensive siege, he will have no chance at victory. Currently, most powers participating in the Continental Championship were under the assumption that Venom Tail was only participating with 1 divine artifact. However, based on Demon's Gate sources, Venom Tail had secretly borrowed a divine artifact from Sovereign Mark, meaning that he was actually participating with 2 divine artifacts. But aren't we being a little too careful, Your Highness? Phoenix Flame asked in confusion. Gentle Snow might be able to pose some threat to you, but Verdant Rainbow's party is still nowhere near strong enough to threaten us in the main event. Even if Black Flame does defeat Venom Tail, I doubt their party can beat any of the former top 8 parties. Not to mention, Black Flame has repeatedly opposed us this entire time. You don't get it. When Elise recalled the 2 moves Gentle Snow used against Returning Blade, she put on a serious expression and said, "Her sword technique is unlike any other. Not even the Divine Fist and the Earthen Princess can confidently say they can win against her if she can perfectly execute it." The championship this time is also considerably different from before, and we must secure first place no matter what. If Black Flame can defeat Venom Tail, I wouldn't mind making their party my chess piece and helping them enter the top 8. Understood. Although Phoenix Flame was still confused, she had absolute faith in Elise's decisions. Meanwhile, inside the ring of Miniature World 085, Venom Tail and Chiffon stood facing each other. Although the match had already begun, neither of the two hurried to take action. "We meet again, Guild Leader Black Flame." "What a coincidence," Venom Tail said with a delighted look. "My memory of you kicking me out of Shadowring Town remains fresh till this day, and I have been constantly thinking of how I should repay you." "I'm glad to hear a holy child like you still remembers me," Chiffon said, responding to Venom Tail's disingenuous smile with a faint smile of his own. "If you really wish to repay me, you can do so by surrendering right now." "You really know how to make a joke, Guild Leader Black Flame," Venom Tail said while activating True Eye, an identification skill that came with his legendary ring, on Chiffon. Then, he chuckled and continued, "You want me to surrender? When you only have a fragmented legendary equipment set and a level of 190? When you don't even have a single divine artifact on you?" Originally, Venom Tail was still rather concerned about facing Chiffon. This was because Chiffon had kept his weapons, equipment, and level concealed while he was in Shadowring Town. He also didn't have an opportunity to use True Eye on Chiffon back then. However, after inspecting Chiffon with True Eye, he realized all his worries had been for nothing. Under normal circumstances, the gap in strength between a player without a divine artifact and a player with a divine artifact was so massive that it was nigh impossible to bridge, even if the former had a considerable advantage in combat standards. Needless to say, the gap would become even more gigantic if a player had 2 divine artifacts while the other had none. "What do you mean by that?" When Chiffon saw Venom Tail's smile turn cunning, he understood that Venom Tail must have used a powerful skill to determine the quality of his equipment. "Stop pretending, Black Flame," Venom Tail said unceremoniously. "Under the effects of my True Eye, even legendary-ranked concealment tools are useless. I can clearly see that you barely have any legendary weapons and equipment, let alone divine artifacts. I will now let you know how foolish it was of you to kick me out of Shadowring Town." After saying so, Venom Tail's aura skyrocketed in intensity. He also stopped concealing the presence of his 2 divine artifacts, letting their auras spread across the ring. At the same time, Venom Tail began to radiate a holy aura several times stronger than what Chalk Splendor radiated when he wielded the Sunlight Blade. 2 divine artifacts. How generous of Sovereign Mark. Apart from that weapon, they even lent him a prized possession like the Holy Aura Robe. Black Flame is doomed for sure. Indeed. With the Holy Aura Robe's ability to amplify the wearer's holy aura by 3 times, any skill Venom Tail uses will exceed the 100% completion rate threshold. Now, every move he makes will be as powerful as an ancient saint of the same level. Apart from the former top 2 experts, I don't think anyone here can afford to confront him directly. The Holy Race players in Miniature World 085 were greatly astonished when they recognized the robe Venom Tail wore. Whether it was for the human race or the Holy Race, divine artifacts were considered incomparably precious treasures. Even royal powers that had existed for thousands of years would only have a very limited number of divine artifacts. It was especially so for top-tier divine artifacts. Meanwhile, Sovereign Mark's Holy Aura Robe was a divine artifact of a similar caliber as the Sun Dynasty's Sunlight Blade. When a player equipped it, their basic attributes would rise to a whole new level, and the holy aura they conjured would skyrocket in power. For a player of Venom Tail's caliber, the holy aura he could conjure with the help of the Holy Aura Robe would be vastly superior to even the holy aura of ancient saints. With such a powerful holy aura, he could combat ancient saints, the equivalent of the human race's ancient gods, of the same level. When paired with a divine weapon, he would become a walking natural disaster in God's domain. At this point, no one present doubted that Venom Tail could obliterate the entire miniature world in a single blow if he chose to. "You were quite proud of your town's Tier 6 legendary guards, weren't you? You thought there was nothing I could do because you had those god-ranked guards protecting you, huh? Well, let me show you the absolute power of an ancient god." Venom Tail said as he abruptly leaped into the air and swung his ritual sword at Shifeng. Tier 6 Holy Skill, 1000 Light Purification. Skill completion rate, 103%. Immediately, the ritual sword transformed into countless light particles that rained down on the ring, each comparable to the all-out attack of a level 192 ancient god. If struck directly by one of these attacks, even a level 200, Tier 6 god would sustain serious injuries. At this time, the miniature world was also showing signs of collapse. Absolute power? Is that so? While looking at the descending light particles, Shifeng leisurely unsheathed the shadow incinerator and executed an upward slash. At the same time, he also cast Divine Shadow, one of the Tier 6 super spells he had learned when he advanced to Tier 6. Tier 6 super spell, Divine Shadow. Spell completion rate, 105%. Originally, Shifeng had only managed to cast Divine Shadow with a 95% completion rate. However, under the influence of the God Chaser set's 6-piece set effect that increased skill and spell completion rates by 10%, his super spell was able to exceed the 100% threshold. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3712, Chapter 786, Successive Victories. Chapter 3712, Chapter 786, Successive Victories. Chapter 786, Successive Victories. Boom. Inside miniature world 085's ring, countless light particles could be seen clashing with hundreds of judgment swords, the shockwaves they generated creating cracks in the miniature world space. Powerful spacetime storms also began to brew within the miniature world, catching several of the spectating participants off guard and reducing them to ashes on the spot. After the collision between the light particles and the judgment swords continued for about 2 seconds, several judgment swords managed to slip past the light particles and strike Venom Tail. Seeing this, Venom Tail dared not risk receiving the attacks with his body, so he promptly brandished his ritual sword to defend himself. Clang! 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 Following each judgment sword blocked, Venom Tail was pushed back a little further in the air. It felt like he was striking a sledgehammer each time he defended himself with his ritual sword. His hand trembled, and his HP also decreased by a significant amount. How is this possible? Venom Tail was filled with disbelief. It should be known that he currently had 2 divine artifacts empowering him. One of them was even the Holy Aura Robe, a piece of equipment that could let him exceed the 100% completion rate threshold when using Tier 6 skills. Yet, despite having such items, he still failed to fully block Shifeng's Tier 6 super spell and even lost 20% of his HP as a result. This was simply unbelievable. Before Venom Tail could overcome his shock, Shifeng swung the shadow incinerator once more. Immediately, the 300+ judgment swords created by Divine Shadow assaulted Venom Tail for a second time, giving him no time to think. 1 wave. 2 waves. 3 waves. The attacks executed by the judgment swords were as powerful as the attacks of a level 200 ancient god. Although Venom Tail had desperately used all sorts of Tier 6 skills and holy arts to defend himself, with over 300 judgment swords attacking him together, his defenses crumbled rapidly, and the strength he took pride in became a complete joke. When Shifeng swung the shadow incinerator for a 5th time, Venom Tail could do nothing but watch as his HP fell to 0. Meanwhile, inside miniature world 085, it wasn't until the system had announced Black Flame as the winner that time within the miniature world seemed to start flowing again. Black Flame won? That's the Holy Aura Robe we are talking about. How can Venom Tail still be outmatched so thoroughly? What kind of divine artifact is Black Flame wielding? The spectators in the miniature world couldn't help but be shocked and confused when they saw Venom Tail's miserable defeat. It should be known that Venom Tail had 2 divine artifacts equipped. Admittedly, Venom Tail himself wasn't a particularly exceptional expert when put within the Continental Championship. He couldn't even be considered a top 30 expert in the previous championship. However, with the Holy Aura Robe, one of Sovereign Mark's prized possessions, empowering Venom Tail, not even an expert like Returning Blade should consider defeating him. After all, Venomtail not only had the basic attributes of 2 divine artifacts to support him, but he could also execute all of his skills with a completion rate of over 100%, letting them exhibit more than double their original effects. In a frontal confrontation, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to consider him invincible in the Continental Championship. Yet, some unknown human swordsman had defeated Venomtail so handily. Are all members of this verdant rainbow party monsters? That guy isn't just a monster, he's a freak of nature. Not even the Divine Fist can necessarily defeat Venomtail in a frontal confrontation. If we are speaking purely in terms of strength, Black Flame is definitely the strongest in this championship. That kind of strength is indeed terrifying. I truly did not expect to see such an expert in a human party. Black Flame can definitely rank among the top 10 in terms of individual strength. I wouldn't even be surprised if he can rank among the top 5. When the other players in the Crucible of the Ancients saw Shifeng's match with Venomtail, they couldn't help but rethink their opinions of the Verdant Rainbow Party. First, Gentle Snow had defeated Returning Blade, a former top 20 expert. Now, Black Flame had defeated Venomtail in 5 exchanges. With the Verdant Rainbow Party having 2 experts capable of ranking among the Continental Championship's top 10 experts, everyone had no choice but to re-evaluate the party's significance. In the Continental Championship, a party with only one reliable expert could, at best, enter the top 16. A good example would be the human race's Star Maiden party. With Elise serving as the party's sole linchpin, the party ultimately failed to progress beyond the top 16 and could only settle for 10th place in the previous championship. It simply wasn't possible for a one-man party to achieve victory starting from the round of 16. It was especially so after the implementation of the major system update. With stamina and concentration becoming even more important, getting into the top 16 might be impossible for one-man parties. However, it was a different story now that it was revealed that the Verdant Rainbow Party had 2 monstrously strong experts. The party was absolutely qualified to contend for a top 8 position, and it might even have hopes of entering the top 4. Meanwhile, so long as a party was revealed to have hopes of entering the top 4, it would instantly become a powerful foe for all other parties. After all, the rewards for the top 4 were significantly more lucrative than those for other rankings, offering an opportunity for players to receive detailed guidance from the depths of the Crucible of the Ancients. It should be known that existences considered mighty, even among primordial god-ranked existences, could be found in the Crucible's depths. The guidance provided by these existences could allow Tier 6 players like themselves to make further progress in their Tier 6 journey, so they naturally couldn't miss out on such an opportunity. Currently, the highest tier players could achieve in God's domain was Tier 6. This meant that players who reached Tier 6 could no longer rely on increasing their tiers to improve their strength, they would need to seek out alternative methods. However, while tedious, Tier 6 players could achieve qualitative improvements so long as they could successfully adopt one of these alternative methods. It was similar to the development of the mana body players had to experience at Tier 4. If players could unlock 100% of their mana bodies, the power of their skills and spells would be on an entirely different level when compared to players who had yet to fully unlock their mana bodies. Meanwhile, after Shifeng defeated Venomtail, he suddenly received a friend request followed by a call from Demon's Gate Star Maiden. The Star Maiden? Shifeng couldn't help but be a little surprised as he looked at the woman in the video, who looked to be in her early 20s. Elise the Star Maiden's fame was much greater than even Deathwind the Divine Eyes in Shifeng's previous life. While Deathwind was considered one of Demon's Gate's 9 great experts, Elise was considered by Demon's Gate as an anomaly that would only appear once every few centuries. Many people assumed she would eventually become Demon's Gate's strongest expert if she hadn't suddenly gone missing in the 12 sanctuaries one day. Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame, Elise greeted Shifeng, her calm tone and demeanor making it seem like she was ignorant of the many offenses Shifeng had committed against Demon's Gate. I have an offer that I believe will interest you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3713, Chapter 787, 10 Seeded Parties. Chapter 3713, Chapter 787, 10-seeded parties. Chapter 787, 10-seeded parties. An offer? What kind? Shifeng's eyebrow shot up as he met Elise's gaze, surprised not only by Elise's proposition but also by the very presence of Demon's Gate's undefeated champion. In Shifeng's previous life, Elise never lost a fight against any human player she challenged. Just before she moved her operations from the Eternal Realm to the 12 Sanctuaries, she even won a duel against a Grand Elder from Demon's Gate. However, shortly after the all-out war between the human race and the holy race began, Elise suddenly went missing, sending the entirety of Demon's Gate into panic. At the time, Demon's Gate had dropped everything it was doing to scour the 12 Sanctuaries. Even Demon's Gate's 9 great experts had mobilized in full force to search for Elise. It was a spectacle that spoke volumes of Elise's importance to Demon's Gate. It should be known that even if Demon's Gate's guild leader suffered a permanent death, the guild's 9 great experts would not act together to exact revenge. Yet, they were willing to sacrifice large amounts of their time to search for Elise, their actions surprising all powers back then. Because of Demon's Gate's response, many rumors began to circulate. Some speculated Elise was internally designated as Demon's Gate's next guild leader. Some also speculated Elise possessed information pertaining to the path beyond Tier 6. Hence, even Demon's Gate's 9 great experts were willing to waste their precious time to search for her. So, to see such an exalted figure from Demon's Gate reaching out to him surprised Shifeng. Guild leader Black Flame, seeing as you are participating in the championship, I presume you are interested in entering the top 4. In an indifferent tone, Elise stated, my party can help you achieve that dream. As I am sure you have already learned of the main event's rules from Verdant Rainbow, parties that make it into the main event are allowed to swap opponents with parties of the same race. With your party's strength, so long as you do not encounter the Divine Fist Party and the Earthen Princess Party, you should have a considerable chance at winning. Are you perhaps offering to fight those 2 parties for us, Miss Elise? Shifeng asked with a smile. That is correct. Elise nodded. Should you encounter those 2 parties, my party can take them on for you. In exchange, if my party encounters the 2 other former top 4 parties, I will need your party to fight them for me. I believe this is an excellent deal for you. Elise's words tempted and surprised Shifeng. Neither Divine Fist Garuda nor Earthen Princess Rin were ordinary characters. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to consider them the strongest player of their respective races in the current generation. Even their party members, though beneath them in strength, were extraordinary experts. Yet, Elise spoke as if her victory against these 2 extraordinary parties was only a matter of course, and she was only making him this offer out of reluctance to reveal her full strength before she clashed with them. Allow me to turn down your offer, Miss Elise, Shifeng said after pondering in silence for a moment. Why? Elise asked, her indifferent voice tinged with a hint of confusion. Do you find it an obligation to refuse because of Zero Wing's hostile relationship with Demon's Gate? No, that's not it. Shifeng shook his head. I just think that your offer is lacking. Lacking? Elise chuckled. Do you mean to say you are confident in entering the top 4 on your own, Guild Leader Black Flame? I am not trying to belittle you, but do you think you won't encounter either of those 2 parties before you enter the top 4? No, not at all. Shifeng shook his head and smiled. I merely think that even if my party comes across those 2 parties, we won't necessarily lose. Elise did not immediately ridicule Shifeng after hearing his statement. Instead, she paused momentarily before asking, what are your conditions, then? As if expecting this question, Shifeng firmly answered, the goddess tablet that is in your possession. In his previous life, there was a rumor speculating that Elise had moved her operations to the 12 Sanctuaries to search for the goddess of space's legacy. Initially, Shifeng doubted the rumor's credibility, but he quickly changed his mind once he learned that Elise was the reason Demon's Gate was relentlessly persecuting Aqua Rose and forcing her to surrender the stone tablet. Unless Elise knew that the stone tablet in Aqua Rose's possession was a primordial god tablet, Shifeng found it hard to imagine why someone of Elise's stature would go to such lengths to acquire it. However, under normal circumstances, it should be impossible for others to know that the tablet in Aqua Rose's possession was a primordial god tablet. Even Aqua Rose herself wasn't aware of the stone tablet's actual identity, while Shifeng only recognized it thanks to his past life's knowledge. In a situation where one lacked the ability to interpret the tablet, most people would only assume the stone tablet contained a god's legacy, which could only be considered insignificant for the likes of an apex power like Demon's Gate. Yet, Elise was adamant in acquiring this supposedly insignificant stone tablet in Aqua Rose's possession. This led Shifeng to believe that Elise knew Aqua Rose possessed a primordial god tablet. Moreover, she likely knew that the tablet was linked to the goddess of space, and the reason she knew this was because she, too, had a goddess tablet of her own. After all, there existed more than one goddess tablet, and without having a goddess tablet of her own, how could Elise possibly know of the existence of other goddess tablets? You seem to know a lot. Elise raised an eyebrow. I don't necessarily need you to transfer ownership of the goddess tablet to me, Shifeng added. I only need you to lend it to me for a while. The Dark Moon Mana technique recorded in Aqua Rose's goddess tablet had 3 stages. If players wished to fully master it, they would need to be able to fully exert the strength of all 7 elements. However, Aqua Rose's tablet only contained detailed information about the law of space, while the information available on the remaining 6 elements was only enough to scratch the surface. In such a situation, it would take Shifeng ages to master Dark Moon fully. If he wanted to accelerate this process, he would have to get his hands on more goddess tablets. You are still not qualified to negotiate conditions with me, Elise bluntly stated. Since your party doesn't want to compete for the top 4, just pretend this conversation never happened. After saying so, Elise disconnected the call, giving Shifeng no opportunities to negotiate further. So you think I can't compete for the top 4? Shifeng chuckled as he looked at the disconnected call. Let's see which of us will be more qualified to compete for the top 4, then. He wasn't in a rush to acquire more goddess tablets. After all, he wasn't without alternatives. If it was before he acquired the Tower of the Abyss, he might have tried to negotiate with Elise more seriously. However, now that he had the Tower of the Abyss, he could more than likely rely on it to perfect the Dark Moon Mana technique. Meanwhile, after Elise ended her call with Shifeng, Phoenix Flame promptly approached her to inquire about the outcome. How did Black Flame respond, Your Highness? Phoenix Flame asked, feeling a little surprised when she noticed the slight frown on Elise. In her mind, Elise would remain calm and indifferent when dealing with most matters, and very rarely would she express anger. He's nothing more than a megalomaniac, Elise said as she flicked her sleeves. Then, she instructed Phoenix Flame, saying, proceed according to the original plan. If we encounter the other 2 top 4 parties, it's fine to reveal the majority of our cards. Understood. Phoenix Flame nodded. Following the conversation between Shifeng and Elise, the Continental Championships preliminaries progressed rapidly. After 6 hours, the battles in the 120 miniature worlds concluded, and all 420 participating parties were assigned their respective scores. Among them, the 32 parties with the highest scores would advance to the main event, while everyone else was disqualified. While inspecting their scores on the scoreboard, the various parties couldn't help but be shocked when they saw the parties ranked among the top 32. Although everyone already knew the participants this time around were stronger than the last championships participants, they hadn't expected that only 12 out of the former top 32 parties would make it past the preliminaries this time. Even more shocking was the change to the preliminaries' top 10 parties. 10th place, 8 Paths Party, 87 points. 7th place, Star Maiden Party, 96 points. 5th place, Verdant Rainbow Party, 104 points. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3714, Chapter 788, 6th Floor Existence. Chapter 3714, Chapter 788, 6th Floor Existence. Chapter 788, 6th Floor Existence. I must be hallucinating. How did half of the top 10 seeded parties get replaced? Didn't the 8 Paths Party rank in the top 8 last time? How did it end up in 10th place? Crap. What's up with that Verdant Rainbow Party and Ink Crystal Party? A huge scoreboard appeared in mid-air when the preliminaries concluded. When the participants saw the information listed, gasps echoed across the crucible. While not a perfect indicator of strength, the rank and score each party secured in the preliminaries allowed other participants to gauge the party's overall strength. Meanwhile, the top 10 parties in the preliminaries were traditionally regarded as the top 10 seeded parties. In past championships, although it wasn't uncommon for new names to appear among the top 10 seeded parties, the number was typically limited to just 1 or 2. Yet, now, not only did the top 10 seeded parties welcome 5 new names, but 2 of them even entered the top 5. Firstly, it was the human race's Verdant Rainbow Party. 5 of its members became group champions of their respective groups and earned 20 points each, while the last member came in 8th place and earned 4 points, putting the party's total at 104 points. In the past, such a total wouldn't even be enough to put a party in the top 10. Yet, the Verdant Rainbow Party managed to come in 5th place. This was simply unbelievable. However, what was even more astonishing was the Crystallians' second-ranked Ink Crystal Party. All 6 party members ended up as group champions, putting their total points at 120. This was the same as the total score the third-ranked Earthen Princess Party secured, and the fact that the Ink Crystal Party managed to rank above the Earthen Princess Party was the part that shocked everyone. It wasn't uncommon to see multiple parties score the full 120 points in past championships. In such situations, time would become the tiebreaker, and these parties would be ranked based on the time they spent on matches in the preliminaries. In other words, the Ink Crystal Party's members completed their matches faster than the members of the former second-ranked Earthen Princess Party. I'm a chosen one from a Crystallian power, but why haven't I heard of any of the Ink Crystal Party's members before? What? The Ink Crystal Party's leader is just a little girl. Going by her looks, is she even 18? Ha ha ha. What an amazing little girl. It's only her first time participating in the Continental Championship, yet she's already made such an incredible achievement. Our race has a bright future ahead. The humans aren't doing too bad this time, either. One of their parties actually squeezed into 5th place. It seems they've made a lot of progress during this period. Upon seeing the results on the scoreboard, some participants celebrated, while some grew anxious. In the case of the Holy Race's participants, most of them wore gloomy expressions. In the last championship's preliminaries, the Holy Race occupied 19 out of the top 32 positions, while the Crystallians occupied 10 and the humans occupied 3. This time, however, the Holy Race only had 15 parties in the top 32, while the Crystallians had 12 and the humans had 5. This indicated that the Holy Race's overall development was starting to lag behind the 2 other races and even risked being overtaken by the Crystallians. The Holy Race's performance was even worse when looking at the top 5 seeded parties. Of them, only 2 parties were from the Holy Race, while 2 were from the Crystallians, and 1 was from the humans. This outcome was utterly disheartening. Although it's a pity we didn't get through the preliminaries this time, the Verdant Rainbow Party has earned a lot of prestige for us humans. We'll also get assigned more admission tickets for the next championship. Indeed. I really didn't expect to see 5 of our parties making it through the preliminaries this time. It's a pity my party doesn't even have the qualifications to spectate. When the many human parties that failed to rank in the top 64 saw the main event's name list, they couldn't help but rue over their inability. The Continental Championship's main event was a clash between the apex existences of the Eternal Realm's 3 continents. Fights of such caliber could rarely be seen, even in the greater God's domain. In a certain sense, players could gain more from spectating such fights than personally participating in the Continental Championship's preliminaries. After all, if a player had never seen the apex of God's domain, how were they supposed to know if they were halfway there or still wasting their time at the starting line? Although the various human powers would often host combat competitions across the greater God's domain, none could compare with the Continental Championship. After all, the majority of the participants in these competitions would be at the 4th floor standard, while only the strongest participants would be at the 5th floor standard. Even then, these 5th floor experts could only be considered mediocre at best. In contrast, even the weakest participant in the Continental Championship was a 5th floor expert. Shortly after the preliminaries results were announced, the parties that failed to rank in the top 64 were teleported out of the crucible of the ancients. Simultaneously, the top 32 parties were teleported to the main event's venue, and everyone promptly began scrutinizing each other. Is she ink crystal? Rin, the earthen princess, revealed an astonished expression as she looked at a crystalline girl who was only a little over 5 meters tall. At first glance, the crystalline girl named Ink Crystal looked adorable. However, whether it was Rin or Garuda, a hint of fear quickly surfaced in their eyes when they finished scrutinizing Ink Crystal. A pseudo-sixth floor expert? Garuda smiled when he finished scrutinizing Ink Crystal. Interesting. How interesting. My trip here this time wasn't a waste after all. Aside from Rin and Garuda, Shifeng was also staring at the adorable crystalline girl named Ink Crystal. What's going on? Shifeng couldn't help but be dumbfounded as he looked at Ink Crystal. While Shifeng couldn't say the same for the other participants present, he knew exactly what Ink Crystal's combat standard was. This was because he had personally seen experts of Ink Crystal's caliber in his previous life. A sixth-floor expert. Ink Crystal was a bona fide sixth-floor expert. She was a peerless monster who could reach the Tower of the Abyss's sixth floor and single-handedly defeat gods. However, as far as Shifeng could recall, he had never heard of any crystalline girl named Ink Crystal in his previous life. Not to mention, despite being so young, the girl had already achieved such a frightening standard. Before Shifeng could snap out of his daze, a voice echoed across the crucible of the ancients. The Continental Championship's main event has begun. May the Verdant Rainbow Party and the Holy Guard Party step forward to start the first match. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3715, Chapter 789, Combating the Holy Guard Party. Chapter 3715, Chapter 789, Combating the Holy Guard Party. Chapter 789, Combating the Holy Guard Party. When the ancient and majestic voice echoed across the crucible, it caused a stir among the 64 parties in the venue. We're starting the main event with such an exciting matchup. 2 of the top 10 seeded parties are matched against each other, right off the bat? How unlucky of them. I know, right? Both parties have a chance at entering the top 8. Yet, one of them will be stuck in the top 32. What nonsense are you spouting? We all know that the Holy Guard Party is a bona fide top 8 party, whereas that human party only got lucky with the groups its members were assigned in the preliminaries. The main event involves party-based fights that test the overall strength of parties. Points scored in the preliminaries mean nothing in the main event. Indeed, there are many examples of seeded parties in past preliminaries failing to survive even the first round of the main event. The spectating crowd started a hushed discussion as the 2 parties approached the central ring. Many players found it a pity that the main event would begin with such an exciting matchup. They felt that both the Holy Guard Party and the Verdant Rainbow Party had the potential to compete for the top 8. Yet, one of these parties was now fated to settle in the top 32. However, some Holy Race and Crystalline players also expressed opposing opinions. They felt the Verdant Rainbow Party had relied on luck to become one of the top 10 seeded parties, and the party's results in the preliminaries could not prove that the party was among the 10 strongest parties in the Continental Championship. Ha ha ha. Black Flame must be dumbfounded right now. He probably never expected in a million years he would face the Arbiter of Death's party right off the bat. Phoenix Flame couldn't help but laugh out loud when she saw the Verdant Rainbow Party entering the central ring. He can't even enter the top 16 now, let alone the top 8. Phoenix Flame was very displeased when she learned that the Verdant Rainbow Party was ranked 5th in the preliminaries. Her mood became especially bitter when many Holy Race and Crystalline parties started to discuss how the Verdant Rainbow Party was the human race's strongest party this time around. This situation was an affront to Demon's Gate's party. Fortunately, Demon's Gate would not need to stomach this humiliation much longer. The Continental Championship's main event pitted parties against each other. Battles would not be conducted on the individual level like in the preliminaries. Hence, A party's overall strength weighed heavily in the main event. Additionally, the major system update caused players' stamina and concentration consumption to increase drastically. This, in turn, affected players' ability to fight extended battles and reduced the effectiveness of individual players in group combat. Although the Verdant Rainbow Party had a monster known as Black Flame, the other party members were insignificant characters. At most, Gentle Snow and Verdant Rainbow could be considered qualified combatants. But in overall strength, the Holy Guard Party, with its latest lineup, was on a completely different level than the Verdant Rainbow Party. In the previous championship, Daystar was the star of the Holy Guard Party, and she was even considered one of the top 5 experts at the time. However, although her party members were weaker than her, every one of them was still stronger than Verdant Rainbow. In this season, the Holy Guard Party's lineup became even more terrifying. Apart from Daystar remaining as the party's leader, the rest of the party was replaced with the Sun Dynasty's Holy Children. While Chalk Splendor, who ranked last among the Sun Dynasty's Holy Children, could be considered negligible, the man and the woman standing beside Daystar were existences whom even the Thunder Empire's Garuda had to be wary of. This was because the two were none other than the Sun Dynasty's first Holy Child, Holy Blood, and second Holy Child, Moon Demon. In individual strength, Holy Blood and Moon Demon could be put on the same level as Daystar. They might even be stronger than the Arbiter of Death, as they had spent much more time as the Sun Dynasty's Holy Children than Daystar. It's still too soon to discount the Verdant Rainbow Party, Elise said, offering a rare comment. The battles in the main event take place in randomly selected maps, and party members are randomly scattered at the start of the battle. If the Verdant Rainbow Party can regroup ahead of the Holy Guard Party, they can use numbers to their advantage. Phoenix Flame did not deny Elise's sentiment. If the main event allowed parties to start each match grouped up, the Holy Guard Party was almost certain to defeat the Verdant Rainbow Party. Firstly, there was Daystar, who was considered to be an all-around expert and the strongest in overall strength among the Sun Dynasty's Holy Children. Then, there was Holy Blood and Moon Demon, the former being considered the strongest melee combatant and the latter being considered the strongest ranged combatant among the Sun Dynasty's Holy Children. If these three worked together, even Garuda, regarded as the strongest player among the Holy Race's current generation, would likely experience defeat. However, like the preliminaries, the main event also incorporated luck-based factors to give weaker parties a chance to surpass stronger parties. Aside from having to fight in more complex terrains, party members in the main event had to start each match separated. This created an opportunity for players to gain a numerical advantage over their opponents. Even if a party was considered weaker than its opponent, achieving victory wouldn't be out of the question if it could regroup sooner than its opponent and capitalize on its numerical advantage. This was why the various Royal and Apex powers had yet to monopolize the Continental Championship and why weaker parties still had a chance of basking in glory. Of course, not all of the top-tier parties shared Elise's sentiment. Even while knowing the main event's mechanisms, they did not think highly of the Verdant Rainbow Party's prospects. This was because the Holy Guard Party's members were clearly much stronger than the Verdant Rainbow Party's members. In addition to each of the Holy Guard Party's members being equipped with a divine weapon, Daystar, Holy Blood, and Moon Demon were also unthinking realm experts. Even if only a few of them managed to group up, they could beat the living daylights out of the entire Verdant Rainbow Party. In the central ring, shortly after the two parties were in position, a bright flash enveloped the entire ring. When the bright flash faded, the ring that originally covered only a 1,000-yard radius had transformed into a ruined urban setting covered with tall buildings. The battlefield was as vast as a large map, and even Tier 6 experts would require upwards of 20 minutes to traverse from edge to center. Currently, the 12 members of the two parties stood scattered across the ruined city. Each player also had a screen displaying their situation to the spectators outside the ring. The moment the 12 players regained vision of their surroundings, they burst into a sprint as if premeditated, leaving behind numerous afterimages as they made their way to the heart of the city. Although the main event's maps were large, they would shrink with time. Hence, parties would usually prioritize grouping up in the map center and avoid fighting while numerically disadvantaged. While the spectators thought it would be a while before the first fight broke out between the two parties, Moon Demon, who had been maneuvering through the outskirts of the urban ruins like an agile snake, suddenly stopped atop a residential building. Then, her head snapped to a particular direction, while her eyes focused on a figure speeding across a distant street, the figure in question being none other than Shifeng. What incredible senses! Even with the battlefield suppressing everyone's senses heavily, she managed to detect him from so far away. Phoenix Flame exclaimed while spectating Moon Demon. Black Flame is in trouble now. While Phoenix Flame was talking, Moon Demon melded with her surroundings and vanished. However, although the spectators could no longer see her, the rapidly changing environment displayed on the screen indicated that Moon Demon was closing in on Shifeng. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3716, Chapter 790, Dual Advanced Law Projection. Chapter 3716, Chapter 790, Dual Advanced Law Projection. Chapter 790, Dual Advanced Law Projection. Commander Azure, do you think Guild Leader Black Flame stands a chance against Moon Demon? Frost Raven, seated in the spectator stands as a member of the Order of 12's party, asked the man sitting beside her while she anxiously watched Shifeng's and Moon Demon's livestreams. The man sitting beside Frost Raven was named Azure Dragon, and he was a level 193, Tier 6 shield warrior in his early 30s. When he heard Frost Raven's question, he pondered in silence for a long while. I can't say. Azure Dragon ultimately shook his head, his gaze solemn as he watched Shifeng remain ignorant of the imminent danger. Moon Demon's hunting methods are out of the norm. Our great commander is at the unthinking realm, but even he barely managed to block Moon Demon's attacks while aware of her presence. Although Black Flame has previously shown himself to possess astonishing strength, field combat is different from a duel. Unless Moon Demon gets discovered, she will likely succeed in her ambush. This is also why Assassin and Ranger type classes are considered the best for field PvP. The Sun Dynasty's Moon Demon was known by all in the southern region. In her debut battle in the southern region, she single-handedly hunted a 1,000-man Tier 6 legion belonging to the Order of 12 using her sly and elusive marksmanship. Additionally, she wasn't even using a divine weapon back then. With the Sun Dynasty equipping each of its representatives with at least one divine weapon for the Continental Championship, it went without saying Moon Demon's current strength was vastly superior to before. Doesn't that mean Guild Leader Black Flame will be the first player to get eliminated? Frost Raven asked. It was honestly a surprise for Frost Raven to participate in the Continental Championship on behalf of the Order of 12 this time. It was even more of a surprise when she saw Shifeng participating in the same Continental Championship and defeating Venom Tail, a chosen one of the Holy Race's royal powers. As a human and a swordsman player, she found the outcome invigorating. Although Demon's Gate reigned supreme in the southern region, it ultimately wasn't as powerful as the Holy Race's royal powers. Any human player with experience fighting large numbers of Holy Race players would know this. On average, the Holy Race's players were individually stronger than human players, and they would become a fearsome force when present in large numbers. Moreover, these were only ordinary experts they were talking about. The Holy Race's chosen ones were even more terrifying, and Frost Raven doubted her whole party could win a fight against one of the Holy Race's chosen ones. Currently, even across the entire Order of 12, only a few members could survive in one-on-one combat with the Holy Race's chosen ones, and this knowledge caused Frost Raven to feel despair. Originally, Frost Raven had started to see some hope again after seeing Shifeng's victory, but now, that won't necessarily be the case, Azure Dragon said, his expression becoming more focused as Moon Demon moved closer and closer to Shifeng. Although Moon Demon discovered Black Flame first, her maximum shooting range should not exceed 300 yards. They are still over 1,000 yards apart right now. So long as Black Flame can detect Moon Demon before she closes the distance to 300 yards, he still has a chance to block her attacks. And so long as Black Flame can stop Moon Demon's first volley, she will be put into a passive state. If Black Flame can get within melee range of her, victory will be his. Upon hearing Azure Dragon's comments, Frost Raven placed all her attention on Shifeng's livestream, hoping that Shifeng could detect Moon Demon before it was too late. At this time, the various Holy Race and Crystallian parties were also watching Moon Demon approach Shifeng with great interest. The current battlefield was a city covered with many high-rises. Compared to primal forests, getting within 300 yards of another player without getting detected was much easier in such a setting. The complex interiors of each building made it especially easy for players to advance undetected. The only problem with such an urban setting was the limited ambush points available. Hence, the first ambush attempt was key. So long as Moon Demon failed in her first ambush attempt, Shifeng would definitely be able to pinpoint her position and track her down. At that time, Moon Demon's disadvantage of being a marksman would be amplified considerably. Under the spectators' gazes, Moon Demon's willowy figure silently shuttled between buildings, moving ever closer to Shifeng. All the while, Shifeng, who was steadily advancing to the center of the city, remained ignorant of Moon Demon's presence. When less than 500 yards separated the two, Moon Demon settled down on the middle floor of a 50-story building in Shifeng's path. Then, she quietly stood 10 yards away from the window with her repeating crossbow raised and seemingly entered a trance, her aura disappearing completely. For a moment, the spectators even lost sight of Moon Demon. Only, when they looked carefully at the screen, their brains quickly realized Moon Demon was still standing there. Meanwhile, Shifeng, who had moved within 400 yards of Moon Demon's location, remained ignorant of Moon Demon's presence. Not even his sixth sense had picked up on the imminent danger. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Moon Demon did not attack Shifeng as soon as he arrived within 300 yards of her. Instead, she maintained her trance-like state as she watched Shifeng leave her sight. Then, 1 second after she lost sight of Shifeng, whoosh! In one swift motion, Moon Demon concentrated her holy aura into her repeating crossbow and pulled the trigger. Then, before any sound could even spread, 16 crossbow bolts left the repeating crossbow, drawing a beautiful arc as they rapidly closed in on Shifeng's back. Meanwhile, when the 16 bolts arrived within 30 yards of Shifeng, Shifeng's sixth sense finally issued him a warning. However, because of how fast the crossbow bolts were, even though Shifeng had detected them, there simply wasn't enough time for his body to make any responses, much less block all 16 of them. What terrifying marksmanship! Azure Dragon muttered in shock and trepidation when he saw this scene. Moon Demon's marksmanship was simply unpredictable. It wasn't until the very last moment that her attacks revealed their presence to Shifeng. However, at such a close distance, not even unthinking realm experts could react fast enough to defend against her attacks. Under such circumstances, the best an unthinking realm expert could hope for was to block a few of Moon Demon's attacks. But with Moon Demon's basic attributes, getting hit by even a few of her attacks would be a death sentence. At this time, Shifeng was also in shock. Almost instinctively, he activated the Winter of Eternal Night's Void Barrier, nullifying the damage of all attacks within a 100-yard radius. Bang! 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 A series of knocking sounds came from half a yard away from Shifeng, which was followed by 16 crossbow bolts falling to the ground beside Shifeng's feet. Holy crap! Shifeng was greatly shocked as he looked at the 16 bolts on the ground. What kind of presence concealment method is that? Although Shifeng had entered the match mentally prepared to fight unthinking realm experts like Daystar, he never imagined fighting such an expert out in the fields would be so different from fighting traditional fifth-floor experts. It was like he was going up against a completely different type of opponent. It should be known that his physique was enhanced by his superior divine body. Yet, even his sixth sense had failed to detect Moon Demon's attacks until the very last second. Moreover, he could tell that this situation wasn't due to his basic attributes being inferior. It was entirely due to the other party's combat standard thoroughly outclassing his. No amount of basic attributes would have let him react to those crossbow bolts any sooner. Honestly, had he not instinctively activated a life-saving skill just now, those 16 bolts would have sealed his fate. Oh, you blocked them. Not bad. When Moon Demon heard the sound her bolts generated, she didn't even need to see to know what had happened. With a smile in her eyes, she leisurely rearmed her repeating crossbow while saying, "But I wonder how many more skills you have to use to block my attacks." Skills and spells had durations and cooldowns. In the case of life-saving skills, they typically had short durations and long cooldowns. It was a stark contrast to her attacks, which did not rely on any skills and hence did not have a duration or cooldown. Additionally, with the city buildings providing cover for her, she should be safe from detection and free to attack Shifeng for some time. However, just as Moon Demon was about to launch her second volley, Shifeng, who understood he was in a precarious situation, suddenly smiled. "As expected of the Holy Guard party. It seems I have no choice but to rely on some unconventional methods." While sweeping his gaze across the buildings before him, Shifeng said in a low voice, "If you think I only have strength to fall back on, you are sorely mistaken. Dual advanced law projection. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,